Internationally renowned pollster Bill Johnson, in an interview on Freedom Radio earlier today, January 29th, stated that the St Kitts and Nevis Labour Party will emerge victorious in the next general elections. In an interview with host Junie Liebert, his predictions are based on a poll conducted last month, December 2019. Speaking briefly on the poll, Bill stressed that the questions were very open-ended, paying keen attention to avoiding any sort of persuasion or link to any particular side. The results are the results, Bill said. Notably, Bill was the pollster hired by the Team Unity construct before the last election. Based on his findings then, he predicted a win for Team Unity.
Yes, I would say overall, at this point, I'm projecting that Labor is ahead in 7 seats. They're having real challenges in 2 seats, and 2 seats are up for grabs. Let me just say at this point that if you had 1,000 U.S. that you wanted to bet on the outcome of the election, I would be very happy to take the Labour Party beating Team Unity and take your $1,000. So let me just stress one thing.
Sure.
The surveys that I do are accurate. If I were doing the same surveys for Team Unity, I would be coming up with the same results. So it's not a question of, the questions are slanted toward my client, or the results are slanted by my client. The results are the results, regardless of who is paying my fee. My reputation is much more important than momentarily pleasing a client. I think my record will show, particularly in St. Kitts, I have an amazingly accurate record. As a matter of fact, 2 days before the last election, I wasn't working for Labor in the last election. I was hired by Team Unity. And I was on the radio and I said that the good news for St. Kitts was there was going to be another doctor who would be available to make house calls after the election because Labor was going to lose the election. And everybody thought I was nuts. And it turned out that I was correct.
He stated that these results came at a time when persons deemed it most favorable for the Harris government, following a payout of double salaries and other highlights during the Christmas season. Bill expressed that the polls found that a great deal of persons are up in arms with the Harris government regarding his mysterious peace program.
Okay, well, first of all, we interviewed several weeks before Christmas. It was probably one of the high points in terms of favorable vibes towards Team Unity because people have just received double pay and there was in the Christmas season and everything. So there's a lot of goodwill toward events toward Team Unity at the time. At the same time, Labor continued to be significantly in the lead. Going back for a moment to issues, because of the paying the criminals program, crime is no longer the hot button issue that it was in previous polls. But what's coming up is just this whole issue of paying criminals. It used to be people were concerned about crime. Now more and more they're becoming concerned about trying to bribe the criminals and paying for peace. But otherwise, issues are jobs. Issues are, quite candidly, perceptions of how the Prime Minister is just in it for himself and his family. 20% of the people, regardless of constituency that we polled in, indicated that they had concerns about how the Prime Minister just seems to be wanting to line his pockets and the pockets of his family, which is, this isn't an open-ended question. We didn't ask people, do you think the Prime Minister is da-da-da-da-da-da? We just said, what are some of the things that you like about the Prime Minister? What are some of the things that you dislike about the Prime Minister? And the fact that off the top of their head, 1 in 5 would say they really have issues with how he mainly cares about his family, himself and his family, and not the people in general. I've never had an issue like relating to corruption that was that high. And I've been polling in the Caribbean for 23 years. And I've never seen anything approach the intensity as that issue has.
According to Bill, the polls also stated that Dr. Douglas is considered to be the most favorable leader and the most favorable person to lead St. Kitts and Nevis.
It's amazing because, and let's just take the 8 constituencies in St. Kitts, where obviously they're both based. Dr. Douglas is significantly ahead of Timothy Harris in 6 of those constituencies. Harris is a shade better perceived in 1, and as you might imagine, in number 7 is better perceived than Dr. Douglas. But in 6 of them, Dr. Douglas has a decided lead over who they want as Prime Minister and who would make the best Prime Minister. And 1 is sort of a toss-up, and then the other one, Harris leads Douglas. So when I see figures that claim that overall Harris is favored over Douglas, I'm sorry, I just can't believe those figures.
Commenting on a recent poll conducted, Bill criticized the accuracy of its findings due to the sample size of choice.
Yeah, well, one of the things, I happened to see the results of that poll, and if you don't mind, I'd like to make a couple of quick comments about it.
Sure, go ahead.
One, if you look at it closely, you'll see that he just interviews 108 people in each constituency. And the surveying that we do for Labor, we interview almost 300 people per constituency. And when I see him calling constituencies on the basis of a sample size of 100, and then I compare that with the virtually 300 that we do in each constituency, I have to think that just on the surface alone, a 300 sample is going to be more accurate than a 100 sample. And it's so easy, if you're just interviewing 100 people in a constituency, to just inadvertently find some pocket of support for one candidate or another that isn't typical or representative of the constituency. You go down one lane, and it happens to be all one family that's supported by Labor or Team Unity or whatever, that can skew that particular constituency. Likewise, I just don't. So I have real problems with the methodology of just interviewing 100 people per constituency. There's an old saying in the research business, the most expensive research is bad research. And I'm not saying this is bad research. I'm just saying that when you only interview 100 people, you're really opening yourself up for potential problems.
All right.
End of sermon.